Awaken to hair growth. Awaken to hair growth because there is possibility to get your hair back. Awaken to hair growth because we're not told that we're able to conquer and overcome alopecia. Awaken to hair growth because I want to be a positive light and beacon for you because I've healed my alopecia and now I help others do the same with different types of alopecia, men, women, children of all ages, of all races and ethnicities. I wanted to connect with you, so thank you so much, because the Rapunzel Project really stood out for me. I've been on your website, of course. I came across it actually because every year, at the end of the year, I look into charities that I want to donate to or, that speak to me. And so I came across the Rapunzel Project, which I had never heard about. And in hearing you and your co-founder speak on your YouTube, there was a lot of parallels with me and Alopecia Angel. There was a lot of parallels because wigs for you two was not an option, just like a wig for me was not an option when I was losing my hair. And I knew that I would get my hair back, just like both of you forged ahead and tried something new to also get your hair back and to not lose it. And there's a lot of parallels in that. And there's also the parallel of wanting to create awareness, which Alopecia Angel also does. And the Rapunzel Project is doing, but needs more outlets, right? It can always use more media.
Always. There's never enough awareness.
Exactly. And I think that the key piece that really connects us both, I feel, is the option, because you are giving other men, women, and adolescents and teenagers the option to not lose their hair with chemo and radiation. And I also want to give people the option to heal in a natural route, because medication for alopecia, autoimmune alopecia, and for many different types of hair loss doesn't work. And the opportunity to heal is there, and we're not given that option, just like you're not given the option about a cooling pack for your head while seeing the oncologist or, talking to the dermatologist. Many times my clients are told there's nothing you can do, when that's absolutely false. And so I really felt a calling to connect, and I'm so grateful that you did today. And I want to hear more of your story, just because, our listeners come from all over the world, and I want to understand if the Rapunzel Project works outside of the US or North America. And also, your backstory, how this happened, and then how you two connected, right? So if you would share with us, that would be wonderful.
Happy to tell you. So my mother died of breast cancer when she was 55. And when I was 55, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and it was quite a shock. But I had always had cysts. And so it was always kind of, is the other shoe got to drop kind of thing. So I got this news, and I kind of had the best and the worst of things. It was found very early, it was found so early that as long as I did the big surgery and had a breast removed, I didn't have to do chemo and radiation. It was a freaky thing. I had a breast reduction surgery, and they found the spots in the tissue when they did routine pathology. They weren't expecting to find it. They found 3 different spots, all close to the margins, no way to know where they were. And so I had stage 0 and still had to do the big surgery. That was pretty traumatic, but because I didn't have to have chemo and didn't have to lose my hair, I didn't have to tell anybody until I felt like it. And what I learned going through this is that well-wishers are exhausting. And at least for me personally, I needed my emotional resources for myself at that time, and I didn't have enough to share. When it was over and the surgery was done and the reconstructions were done, I was perfectly happy to tell anybody about my experience, but I was able to do it in my own time because I didn't have hair loss and my health wasn't everyone else's business. So I was very grateful for that. My friend Shirley, 3 years later, suddenly diagnosed with breast cancer out of the clear blue sky, no family history. And she was going to have chemo and radiation. And radiation doesn't cause you to lose your hair, but chemo drugs commonly do. And she accidentally found out about this cold capping process. Her dermatologist, who was a personal friend that she grew up with, they were just chit-chatting about anything she should do to take care of her skin during chemo. And her friend said, you might know this woman. She's distantly connected to you through some tennis circles or something. And a couple of years ago, she used these weird caps and didn't lose her hair during chemo. And Shirley's like, what? She's a competitive tennis player and said, I can't be out on the court playing competitive tennis with a wig on my head, so I'm just going to have no hair. So she was very intrigued, did some research, contacted the founder of Penguin Cold Caps, which was the company involved, contacted this woman in Minneapolis where we lived. And after calling like 10 other patients that he referred her to, she called her doctor and said, have you ever heard of this? And what do you think? And he said, I've vaguely heard of it. I doubt it works, but I have no objection if you try it, which was really major because I had an oncologist in the same practice who said he would have never let me try it. So it was really interesting. Her doctor was just more open-minded than some people. And Shirley said, what do I have to lose? She rented the caps. The best part of the story is that we were like cast of thousands. The hospital didn't know what to do with us because Shirley has a big circle of friends and everyone wanted to help. On her third chemo treatment, we always arrived right at 8:00 when the clinic opened because it was a long day with capping. A typical day capping is 7 hours with the manual cold caps. So you've really got to be there at the start of the day. And for the morning of her third treatment, she should have had not a hair on her head for the chemo regimen she was having. And when we walked in at 8:00, the entire team of nurses and aides was lined up like a receiving line because they all thought we were crazy. It was like, if this worked, we would know about it. The doctors would know about it. Everyone would know about it. These women are nuts. And we walked in, Shirley with a full head of hair down her back, and people were crying. There were tears flowing because no one could believe what they were seeing. And so that afternoon, after her third treatment, Shirley and I went out for a glass of wine, and we said, we really have to do something about this because no one knows about this. And if it can work, this will change a lot of people's cancer journeys. So we made a decision to start working on a concept for a nonprofit, but we wouldn't launch until she still had all her hair after her 6th chemo. And she did. So we spent the fall kind of brainstorming a name and what we were going to do and what we weren't going to do. And the day after her 6th chemo, we hit the button. We had made a decision. We both had other full-time occupations that we couldn't be fundraisers. We couldn't be the people who made it possible for patients to afford to do this because the need is bottomless. And we really couldn't devote ourselves full time to the kind of fundraising initiatives we would have to meet the purpose. But it seemed to us that generating awareness that this process existed and is effective was even more important initially than helping people afford it, because if you don't know about it, you can't even consider it.
Exactly.
So it was kind of the cart before the horse. And so our mission from the beginning has been to create awareness of the existence and the effectiveness of hair-saving cold therapy. And initially, of course, it was just the manual cold caps, and now there are the machine options as well. And I think there's going to be probably something even better down the road in the future.
Wow, that's incredible. That's an amazing story. And so you've been open essentially for this charity has been open since 2009. And
correct.
You've worked with numerous people and organizations, and you've helped millions probably of people already, correct?
I don't know if it's millions because there's no way to know who's getting our information but not contacting us. But I think that we could fairly say that we've made a difference. In the beginning, even doctors didn't believe. And so you couldn't get any traction with oncologists. And it was really interesting when you talked to the women who had found this process and had used it. If you had like personality graphed them, they would have all fallen in the same quadrant, because they were the people who, after they got over the shock of their diagnosis, started doing research, started not taking no for an answer, and started trying to figure out how they could make the best possible circumstances for themselves while they went through this. And what was really fascinating, we realized very early that we weren't going to get to talk to a lot of oncologists. We don't have standing. We're not doctors. We're not researchers. We're not their patients. We don't even necessarily live where they are. We had no basis to get our foot in the door with busy people. who were busy saving lives. So we had to find better ways to reach patients. And we kind of discovered by accident that hair salons were our best secret weapon. Most patients, when they have to shave their head or know they're going to lose their hair and need to buy a wig, have no idea where to start. And one of the people they are the most likely to consult is their stylist. Most women have a relationship with their stylist. They've been going to them for years. They know when their kid's in the first grade play. They know when their son's getting married. I mean, it's ongoing. And so it's someone you kind of are comfortable with. And it's also someone who might have some relevant information for you. And the best part of it is patients typically consult their hairstylist after their diagnosis, but before they start treatment, because they need to figure out when are they going to shave their head or what kind of wig to buy and how fast can I get it. So if the stylist could turn around and say to them, there might be a better option for you, that was magic. And for several years, we got more referrals from salons than we did from any other source, which was really interesting. Over time, and particularly starting after 2015, when the first machine system got FDA clearance, doctors started becoming believers. And even from the beginning, we had a small cadre of very devoted doctors who were big believers. But it took a long time to bring the industry as a whole around. And it's still a work in progress. And interestingly enough, the oncology nurses are another whole level of resistance because they're worried that it's going to create more work in the clinic and they're already stretched very thin. So they're not even necessarily opposed medically. They just don't want to have to deal with it. And it's hard to argue that they're stretched thin. It's just that even though this may not be life-saving, it changes people's journeys in such an important emotional way that it is in many ways as important as any other kind of medicine in a bottle.
Absolutely. It's absolutely traumatic. I lost 50% of my hair going through alopecia, and I have clients who are completely bald with alopecia universalis and come to me. And for me, it's been more than 8 years since I've healed it. But for them, it's also a work in progress of emotional toll, the mental health, the depression. There are so many other, anxieties, or even when you are dealing with smaller children, because I have a lot of clients who are as young as 8 months to adolescents and, teenagers and people in college.
I might sneeze. I'll put it on mute for a minute.
No problem. Bless you, by the way. So yes, it is traumatic and it does impair your quality of life on all levels, to do activities like surely with tennis or to be outgoing, if that is your personality, it creates and forces you to be more of an introvert, to stay home, to not want to show up in life. And it does cause it casts a shadow over your head, essentially, in terms of that glimmer of hope. And this is what I love to bring to my clients by sharing other stories, other success stories on how people with, various types of alopecia, including scarring alopecia, can still see hair growth, even though the doctors are opposed, even though the doctors say, no, there's nothing you can do, that diet and lifestyle won't work, that, so many other alternative methods won't work. Like, this is your only route. They want to corral you into what they know. And I get it because it's all they know. But unfortunately, as you've seen and what I see as well, their toolbox is limited and it takes years, if not decades, for them to be more open-minded. And it's very unfortunate because there is a gap in education. There is a gap in how they continue their education even after graduating, let's say 20, 30 years ago, right? To be completely updated with the new and the latest technology is something that not all providers do, right?
It was really interesting to watch the doctors' minds get changed. Because very early on, we met with a research scientist and a group of doctors at one of the main hospitals in Minneapolis where we lived. And the man who founded Penguin Cold Caps had come over from England to make a presentation to them. And the researcher said, everything I know says this doesn't work, but there is undeniable proof that it works. So I have to rethink this. He said, but this is part of why you are going to have a barrier with medical community, because it doesn't make sense to them. And the essence of what I think he was telling us was chemo kills fast-growing cells. Hair follicles are among the fastest growing cells in the body. And it's why hair loss is such a common side effect of chemotherapy. And he's basically saying, it makes no sense to me that you can constrict the blood vessels that go to the hair follicles for a few hours and then take those caps away and allow free blood flow and free circulation again and minimize the impact of hair loss so dramatically, because chemo drugs are designed to stay in the body for days. In fact, that's why most patients feel so poorly after a chemo treatment, often for several days or longer, because those drugs are still in the system. What no one had researched at that time, and I don't know if even today they actually have ever done the definitive study, but what appears to be the case is that if you restrict the access of the chemo drugs to the hair follicles for the first few hours, the body is working immediately to dilute and metabolize those drugs. And if you give the body a few hours, even though the drugs are in the system for days, it's diluted the strength of the drugs substantially. And apparently, just that reduction in strength is enough for most patients to save most of their hair. And it's really fascinating because you would have never thought you could parse it like that. And I think that's what he was saying. But it was really interesting with the doctor community in general, because it didn't take them more than one or two patients in most cases to become believers. Because, I mean, like Shirley shouldn't have had a hair on her head for the chemo regimen she was on. So when she had a full head of hair, there was nothing anybody could say except this must work. And so we got pretty far along with the doctors, faster than, maybe not as fast as we would have liked, but faster maybe than otherwise expected. The nursing community has been tougher because they're just worried about the burden on them. And also a patient who's capping frequently has a helper and a cooler, and the clinic is crowded, and they stay there longer than they otherwise would stay there, and they need to turn the chair. So there's still a lot of battles to fight. But at the end of the day, people make the mistake of thinking it's about vanity, and vanity is certainly a factor. But when you talk to patients, it's privacy. It's my health is my business, and I'll tell what I want to who I want. It's identity. It's looking in the mirror and not seeing a stranger. It's empowerment. You're sort of at this helpless time where you basically, things are out of your control, but this is something you can do for yourself. It's so many things, as much or more than vanity, that it's really game changing for a lot of patients. And so, we're a very small nonprofit, but I think we've had impact beyond our size. And it's just something we're very passionate about because we know how bad it feels to get that diagnosis. Mm-hmm. And if you can make the journey better, you're doing something for everybody involved, the patient, the patient's family. It's just something that also pays forward, because those patients who are successful frequently are the mentors or information providers in their community for patients that follow them.
That's wonderful. And everything you said has hit home because it parallels alopecia 100%. And I think that is the biggest takeaway, is that there is a choice, there are options, and we just need to make them available and spread the word about it. And additionally, there is a choice to how you want to live. In the case of alopecia, there is a choice to either heal or not heal. And regardless of what your doctor says. In the case with chemo and cancer in general, or breast cancer in this case, there's a choice to have your hair or not have your hair during the process. The journey is still arduous, just like healing alopecia. There are, challenges to that, but at the same time, the outcomes are just so much brighter. They're so much more in control. And I think that's the biggest takeaway, is having a little bit more of control in our hands allows us to feel better and to, move forward in a more positive manner versus the doom and gloom, and then just having your world just upside down, change 360, and then feeling like you're spinning out of control. I think that's the worst part.
Without question, you get that diagnosis and it's a few days before, at least for me, I could even kind of feel like I could feel my feet on the ground again. I mean, you're just literally spinning. And most patients, and doctors tell us this, patients say, am I going to die? And the next thing they say is, am I going to lose my hair? Right. Because they know with an early stage diagnosis for a lot of cancers that their long-term prognosis can be very good with the right treatment and the right protocol. Okay. But the hair thing is terrorizing. So it really does matter. And there's a statistic out there from some studies that says that about 8% of patients refuse chemotherapy. And the primary reason for that is they won't tolerate the hair loss. So, for some people, it's literally life-saving. For other people, it might be more emotional health saving, but emotional health, if you feel better, you heal better. I mean, it matters greatly. And I just want to emphasize also that scalp cooling can be used by any patient with a solid tumor. It doesn't, not just breast, ovarian, lung, brain, stomach, doesn't matter. Also, most lymphoma patients can use cold caps. Leukemia patients cannot. Because the cancer is circulatory, there's too much risk of a free cell escaping, and they don't want to shut down treatment to any part of the body for even a brief period of time. But all solid tumor patients and some lymphoma patients as well. So there's a pretty broad universe of cancer patients that this can help. And I think we're going to see some technologies in the future that might even be applicable for children. We're not there yet. The caps are too cold. The period you have to sit for is 7-8 hours. Adolescents maybe, but children no. But in the future, I think there's going to be help for children as well.
That's wonderful. So this is available in the USA and in the UK?
So the Rapunzel Project, basically we're an information service. So we're happy to give information to anyone. Our biomedical freezer donation program is only open to USA hospitals because we obviously don't have the resources to put freezers around the world. But we're happy to provide information to anyone, anywhere. We've even had a patient letter translated into Spanish for some of the inquiries that we get. The scalp cooling companies that make cold caps we deal with 5 of them. There are 1 or 2 that we don't deal with for reasons that I don't need to get into. But one is located in the UK. The other 4 are in the US, and these are for the manual caps. You rent those caps for the period of time that you need them. It's an inefficient system because if you have chemo every 3 weeks, the caps are sitting in your home freezer for the 3-week period in between, and someone else can't use them. The reason for that is that the liability for the caps has to be between the company and the patient. So the patient has to rent from the company, and then technically no one else can use them. There are patients, I think, who lend them out, but technically no one else can use them because of the liability arrangement. With the machine systems, the Paxman company is located in the UK. They have machines around the world. DigniCap is actually based in Sweden, but has US headquarters in Dallas. And there's a new machine system called AMA is just starting to roll out that's in San Diego. Those systems, Paxman and DigniCap have installations around the world. I don't think AMA, they're too new. I think they're just trying to make some arrangements with US hospitals right now. But they have an interesting system because it is a portable machine. So the patient can roll herself down the hall and out of the chemo chair after her 2-hour infusion and doesn't need to sit there for another 2 or 1.5 or 2 hours or longer tying up a chemo chair while she's still hooked up to the machine. So the portability is a big plus for the clinic and potentially a big plus for the patient too. So they also have FDA clearance as well as the other 2 machines. So it'll be exciting to see if they can figure out their distribution model and become more broadly accessible to patients going forward.
Fantastic. So how can the general public help? What can we do to help more?
I think the 2 biggest things the general public can do are be aware of the process, try to spread the word, because even if you saw something on the morning news or read something in the paper, it may or may not register 2 or 3 years later when someone you know or love needs treatment. So just keeping it top of mind, telling your hairstylist about it, especially if you happen to call in an oncologist, making sure that they're sharing the information with patients. So just awareness in general. And the second thing is, while we always welcome donations, honestly, there are several nonprofits, one national and several local in the US, that are doing the work we don't do, which is to help patients pay for this. And those nonprofits always need donations. So fundraisers for them, anything people can do. The national organization is called hairtostay.org. And then you can see it on our website in the CAPS section. But there's a nonprofit in North Carolina, one in Washington, Virginia, Maryland, one in Michigan, and I'm missing one. I think there are 4 that are state-oriented nonprofits that are doing the same thing as Hair to Stay, but locally. And then additionally, there's a nonprofit called Charcheret, was actually started to help Jewish breast cancer patients, but has expanded unbelievably and has by far the most generous assistance for all patients, all cancer patients, breast and ovarian around the country. Not Jewish doesn't matter, location doesn't matter. They're just phenomenal. So the funding to help people afford capping is frankly more important than the funding to help us create awareness, because at this point, awareness is coming. We need to keep the lights on, but awareness is coming. But there's bottomless need for people to be able to afford the process.
Absolutely. I saw on your website that a lot of insurance takes it. And I mean, it's not, the full umbrella, but there are certain pieces and states and different types of, companies under the insurance umbrella that do accept. And so that is very exciting news for that.
It's hit or miss with the insurance. We warn people, even if you think you're going to be covered, don't count on it until you have confirmation from the insurance company. And if you get denied appeal, a lot of appeals succeed. But it's a fight still. And the machine systems are making some headway because they now have diagnostic codes assigned to them by the AMA, which is a big step forward in acknowledging the process, where the manual caps are still going under cranial prosthesis or durable medical equipment, which is just these catch-all things that just allow different insurance processors to make their own decisions, because it's all subjective, which is why you have to appeal. So, but with these nonprofits that are out there, especially Charette, there's a lot of help for a lot of people.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love to hear this. My mom's friend was actually just diagnosed with breast cancer, and she's also doing chemo. She's in San Diego. So I will definitely pass on your information. And then, of course, the other organization you mentioned down in San Diego. So that
if she's in San Diego, she should definitely contact the company. Itself is called Cooler Heads, and the machine is called AMA, AMMA.
Will do.
Okay, but it's Cooler Heads in San Diego. She's in the right place to be able to work with something that might be the best innovation we've had in the industry recently.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I would love to understand a little bit more how you went about connecting with the salons. Was it a grassroots, just locally, and then just kind of like grow from there? Or did you like email blast?
We were incredibly lucky, and we can't take any credit for it. There's a hair care products company, professional hair care products company, and their corporate attorney contacted us and said, hello, here's who we are. We are looking for a charity to support that kind of enhances our corporate mission, which was all about inner and outer beauty. And they basically, we had several interviews with them, and they basically decided we were their charity. They had us at an all-company meeting and handed us a $50,000 check, which kept us in business for a long time. But the most important thing was that, particularly in the early days, they built up such enthusiasm with their sales force that we have some literature. The sales force would distribute the literature on their calls, and they would attempt to do salon education. And a lot of times their product educators would go in to teach a new hair color product or a new styling product or whatever. And then they would add in a little something about your chemo clients need to know about this. And they also frequently in October, where a lot of salons do fundraisers for breast cancer awareness, because their clientele is mostly female. And obviously it's kind of a big month for fundraisers. So for a long time, we had a lot of their salon customers doing fundraisers for us, which the support was phenomenal and the enthusiasm was phenomenal. So they were sold to a German company, and they moved to Los Angeles. And our participation and support with them has been more sporadic because it's different management and they've got other priorities, and business has been tough some years and whatever. But at the end of the day, they always pop up again and make like the video they made for our website. We don't have the resources to make a video, and Shirley and I are clueless on technology. So that's not happening. But they've been great for support like that. And they still sporadically distribute our literature to salons, and we're on their website. And at various other times, we've had some partnerships with other salons for a while, a couple of others for a while, because the stylists get it. If you talk to them, they will tell you they never want to see another client in tears. And so they get it, they feel it, and they don't have any of the barriers that the oncologist nurses or oncologist physicians had to telling patients, you ought to check this out. So it was really remarkable. And as I say, at this point, I think the pendulum has tipped, because the oncologists in general are on board. We'll still get an email from a client who says, my doctor told me this won't work. Okay. But we used to get 10 of those a day, and now we get 2 a month.
Mhm.
So it's really shifted. The bigger issue is the patients who don't know about it at all, and there's nobody to tell them. So, and, in the more rural areas, that is still particularly a problem. And the most disheartening ones are the emails we get saying, I just had my first chemo and heard about this, because we can't help them after the first chemo.
Really?
There's
How's
one,
that?
because the function of the drugs is to kill the fast growing cells. And once you've had the first treatment, those drugs are in your system. So hair loss is a time function. You might not lose a lot of hair the first week or the second week, but by the time you show up for your next treatment, the third week, you're going to be losing hair. And after 2 treatments, you generally don't have any hair. There is one drug called Taxol, which is generally given weekly for 12 weeks instead of every 3 weeks for several intervals. And Taxol is a lighter chemo. And with weekly Taxol, if you've had one treatment, you might still come out pretty well. But it's they call it chemo light. But with the exception of weekly Taxol, patients can't save their hair if they've had one treatment. There are some patients who still choose to proceed because there are 2 reasons to still do so. Once you start capping, regrowth can start even while chemo is ongoing. So you get a big jump. If you're going to have 12 weeks of chemo and you start 3 weeks in with caps, you're getting a 9-week jump on your hair growing back. For some people, that matters. Their son's getting married, whatever. Also, as soon as you get a little hair, you can start to work with extensions and stuff like that. And but you have to have something to work with. The other thing, though, is that the more chemo treatments you have, the more damage you have to your hair follicles. So you hear about the chemo hair that people get when they're done with treatment and it starts growing back, and it's frequently gray and it's frequently real frizzy and kinky. You prevent a lot of that damage if you cap, even if you're too late to save your hair. On the other hand, it's costly and it's a lot of your time. And sitting for that many hours for every chemo treatment to not save your hair is not for everybody.
I see that.
It's a choice. It's a choice, and we can't tell people what's the right thing to do, but we do warn everybody that you have to start capping from the beginning, if they write and say they're on weekly Taxol, we can still tell them that it might be worth going forward. But if it's not weekly Taxol, they're not going to save much hair.
Wow. This has been extremely informative. I know my listeners will love this, and I know that they will definitely share and spread the word, because as women, this is what we do. We help other women when they're in need, and especially when it comes to mental health, emotional health, physical health, and hair is, there's so many people on forums that say hair, don't care, I'm bald and I'm happy. And that's great. If that's you, that's great. That wasn't me. That was not me. I could never do a wig. I could never do a topper. That was not me. To me, it was my identity. And I see this, I feel this with you, and even with Shirley, and I haven't even met her yet. And I know that this is, the crux of the situation. We are, as Steve Jobs says, the crazy ones that little by little change the world, that little by little make a difference because we said no to what was given to us as our limited options and forged a new path. And I think that's the beauty of being a strong female, a strong person with a voice, a strong person with the knowledge, and just kind of like the scrappiness to look for an alternative, because I knew being bald was not going to be my destiny. You yourself have beautiful hair in front of me. So yeah, no, there's a different way. There's a better way, and there are options for everybody. Is there anything
Absolutely.
else you'd love to share with our listeners before we say goodbye?
Try to think if there's anything I didn't talk about. There's always so much. I feel like I could talk forever, and I shouldn't.
Same.
But, no, I think you understand. There's a passion. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
You learn something that could change other people's lives, and then you did something about it. And, every time most of the time we talk to patients at the very beginning of their journey. And after that, we don't, because we send them on to the resources they need, and then they go on their way and they proceed. Every once in a while, we'll get an email back from somebody 3-4 months later saying, I can't believe it. This is my picture at my daughter's graduation. I look amazing. Thank you for everything. You get an email like that, and nothing else can go wrong that day. So, it's a labor of love. It matters. It helps people get through hard times. And, we're delighted that in a small way we could make a difference.
I agree wholeheartedly. I agree. And this is what fuels my passion too, because I can talk about hair and alopecia all day long. My husband has to temper me sometimes because we're at a dinner party and it's the only topic that I want to talk about.
If I get started when we're out to dinner, usually people are so interested because so often people haven't heard about it that
Right.
then my husband doesn't get to say anything for 20 minutes because every time I explain, they ask more questions. So as a rule, I tend to avoid it if it's just social because it's sort of not fair, but it is a passion.
Yeah, 100%. And to me, it's a mission, and it's something that I never saw myself doing because I, as yourself, also had a different type of job in corporate situation before, but this was a huge calling that I felt it extremely unfair that, I speak 3 languages. I speak Spanish, Portuguese, and English, and I couldn't find any information. And it just took me over 3 years to figure this out. And then since I have a program in English, I have a program in Spanish, and I love the fact that you've translated some of your information in Spanish. I would love to connect with you because I would love to share that information in Spanish with the Spanish population that do follow me, because I think it's also important to them and just to any group who doesn't speak English, because there's so much information out there, but a lot of misinformation is there too, to
Right.
take us away from what's true and make everything very confusing. And this is the hard part for any consumer, any person who wants to research and find out more. It's really hard to see who's telling us the truth, what's really the best way or the best strategy moving forward. So let's play a scenario. Let's say someone has been diagnosed today. What is like the first 2, 3, 5 steps that you would suggest for them?
The best thing they could do is just go to the website, find the contact us page, and send us an email, because we actually don't publish a phone number, and it's not because we're mean. It's because there is so much information that we need to give them that not only is it not possible to do it in a phone call, but you have a patient who is not at her best normally, and they transpose phone numbers, they write down incorrect email addresses. If we can send them a fairly lengthy patient letter outlining all their options, web links, phone numbers, costs, financial aid options, just about everything we can tell them that they need to get started. We send that out in the letter. If they follow up and they need to talk to us, we'll arrange an appointment to talk on the phone. But 90%, 95% of the time, the letter gives them everything they need to move forward. They have to make some inquiries. We are not here to say, use this company, not this company. We are basically agnostic in terms of the providers. There are reasons for someone to use a particular company sometimes based on location or how fast they need the caps or what type of chemo they're having. One of the machine systems doesn't work with one particular drug combination, so we will tell them that. So, there are variables that when we know enough about their situation, we put those variables right into the patient letter we send them. If we don't and they follow up, we'll either give them an email reply back or get on the phone. But the best thing they can do is just shoot us an email. We normally get back to them in a couple of hours. We give them a ton of information. And in most cases, the cap providers, if you're renting the manual caps, they overnight them. So you could be diagnosed on Monday, have your caps shipped Monday night, and start chemo Wednesday. It can be that fast. It's a little unsettling for a lot of people because they have to make so many decisions at that time. But the caps come with instructions. There are, in some areas of the country, particularly the major metropolitan areas, there are professional cappers that you can hire to cap you. It's expensive. We don't necessarily recommend it. There was no one who knew how to cap when Shirley used the caps. We read the instructions. We followed the instructions. We got smarter about it, and we did it ourselves. But if you can afford a professional capper and there's one nearby, if you have them come for the first chemo, they can train your helpers. And it takes a lot of anxiety out of the day to have somebody who's done this before and knows what they're doing to be there for the first treatment. And you don't have to hire them for 4 or 6 or 12 chemo sessions. But at the end of the day, our patient letter gives them everything they need to go on various websites. They already have prices. They have the other basic information. They can go on the websites and read about the products. They have phone numbers to call the companies. And they literally can rent caps the same day if they want.
That's beautiful.
If they're going to a clinic that has the machines installed, the process is a little different. But essentially, they need to contact, they will be told at the clinic, or they should be told, but our website will also tell them that they have to contact the hub for that company. The company, they make their payment, the company sends them a cap kit because they go to the hospital, the machine is already there, but they bring their own personal cap with them. They practice fitting it on their head at home, and then they show up at the hospital and the nurse hooks them up to the machine and operates the machine. So it could all happen really fast. And honestly, the information is also on our website, I think with the exception of pricing, because pricing changes. So we don't put the pricing on the website, but we do send it in our patient letter. And I'll send you the Spanish version of the patient letter. Obviously, we tailor it for every inquiry. So not everything the letter says is included in every answer, because if you don't live in Michigan, you don't need to know about the nonprofit in Michigan that can help you. But it'll give you a general idea of the kind of information we send out. And I think you'll find it informative. But it's really as simple as send us an email. Our response time is very fast, and everything they need to know to proceed is in that letter.
That's fantastic. I appreciate that, Nancy. I don't want to take too much more of your time, but I thoroughly, like my heart is just overflowing with happiness right now, because it's amazing the connections you can do just by sending an email. And that's as simple as what happened here. And the connection is so powerful. I feel it. And your story is remarkable. Shirley's story is remarkable. And I love what you two are doing, and I definitely want to help and support. And this is one of the ways I'm going to get this out to all my listeners and definitely share and create more awareness, because the more we can help others, the better this world will be. This is what we're placed on earth to do, I feel. So yes, thank you so much for all that you do, for all that Shirley does.
Thank you for everything you do and for reaching out to us too. It's always very exciting to have someone else who understands the mission and can share it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I will be following up with you shortly via email, to give you essentially links to the podcast and everything, so you can share it with your website, newsletters, and anything else. And then, create more awareness that way as well. So I appreciate you.
That's fantastic.
In every way. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. Take care and all the best. Speak soon.
Be well. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Alopecia Angel podcast, a positive light in healing alopecia. You can do this, and we can help. Spread the word that reversing alopecia is possible by telling your friends and family.